I'm Harrison Newman, and welcome to another Concord Victory interview. As a lower sixth student, I'm in the middle of deciding what to study at university. Part of that journey is working out how I'll fund my degree and what a sizable student loan balance might mean for my future finances. The stakes feel high. The UK student loan book has climbed to 236 billion, almost double a decade ago. And the Department for Education reckons a typical full-time undergraduate starting this autumn will borrow about £42,800 over 3 years. Yet university remains hugely popular. Roughly 280,000 UK 18-year-olds secured places in 2024, representing 36.4% of this age group. To help me and you make sense of all of this, I'm joined today by Lucy Nottingham, who is a higher education advisor at the University of East Anglia. For nearly 16 years, Lucy has steered prospective students through the maze of personal statements, budgeting, and course choices, while forging partnerships with schools nationwide. We'll explore whether the level of borrowing still makes sense, how interest linked to CPI, inflation, builds from day one, and what happens if you switch course midway through the first year. Thank you, Lucy, for joining us. But first, could you set out the key Student Finance England application deadlines that 2025 entrants simply must not miss?
Hi, Harrison. It's lovely to be back at Stowe and to be able to chat with you about student finance and how it's working in the university sector at the moment. In general, when we're thinking about the 2025 cycle, it's actually racing up quite quickly. So student finance opened in February of 2025 for 2025 students, and it is now coming towards their soft closure date, which is the 16th of May. Now, what that means is if students apply by the 16th of May, they're guaranteed their finance for the first day of their course. It gives student finance time to ask the questions of those who might be self-employed or need a little more evidence towards their application. It doesn't mean that students can't apply for student finance after that date. They absolutely can, but it might be a little bit later before they get their first student loan payment, which might come in January or perhaps halfway through your first semester, which may in turn mean that you've already had to front an accommodation payment. So it's best to get that application done by the 16th of May this year.
Thank you. And how do tuition fee and maintenance loans actually reach a student? What triggers each installment, and how is eligibility calculated?
Okay, so the way that the student finance package works is it generally comes in two parts. The first part being the tuition fee loan, which this year sits at £9,535 for each year that a student is studying once they start in 2025. That part of the loan is eligible for any student who is eligible for that home fees package allowance. But the maintenance loan or the living cost part of the loan has a few more stipulations. They'll look at where a student is heading. So perhaps initially they will look at whether they are staying at home and commuting, whether they're heading off to a halls of residence or a private accommodation at a university, or whether they're heading down to London. The second part of what they are looking at will be the household income of the previous tax year. So it would be a sliding scale as to what student allowances could be. So if we were looking particularly at the students who are heading off to halls of residence or private accommodation, then the lesser amount sits just under £5,000 and the top amount sits just over £10,000. So the higher a student's household income, the more towards that £4,900 it will be. And if it's a lower household income, it'll be more towards £10,000. So the best way to find out, and because there's a number of living cost student calculators out there now, is to specifically look at the government student finance calculator. And that should apply each and every year. It's been running for a number of years now and can give you an idea of what year this year's finance is. Harrison, can I check I've answered all the bits of your question there?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
No problem.
And many students open a specialist bank account before arrival. Does this choice of account influence when or how their maintenance load is paid?
In general, no, it doesn't. So a number of students either convert their bank accounts into a student bank account, or they keep going with their UK bank account. But generally, it's a UK bank account that student finance are looking for. Student finance repayments or payments whilst you're a student happen generally at the start of each semester. So that might be in September, January, and then at Easter. So that £4,900 roughly is broken down into three, and that then package will support students in applying for their accommodation, because that's roughly when accommodation payments are taken each semester. So no, it won't have any impact to the bank account that you have, but it might be worth shopping around and looking at overdraft facilities, remembering that this in particular, an overdraft is a loan and repayments will need to be made, perhaps whilst you're studying or perhaps when you graduate. So keep an eye on those bank accounts and the perks that they might offer you.
And latest forecasts put average borrowing per undergraduates at around £42,000. In your view, is that a debt a sound investment given graduate earnings and the loan's income contingent repayment terms?
Okay. I suppose it's individual to each and every case, and there are more and more opportunities to gain employment through a number of different means. That might be through a degree apprenticeship programme, that might be going into the world of work and having a qualification that sits alongside it. But for many students, it is a case that their degree is needed to get them onto the job that they want to do. Some of them might be quite specific jobs, like medicine, for example. If you're wanting to become a doctor, it is still probably the route that many physicians take to go through the medicine programme and go through undertaking a degree. But for some, it might be an option to take something slightly different. When it comes to the degree, graduate employers are still looking for a degree programme because they understand the transferable skills that graduates have at the end of their programme. So you can utilise those across the board. So I think it's roughly 75% of employers look at any degree programme because of the problem-solving skills you'll have gained at university or built on at university, or perhaps the communication skills that they recognise from a degree programme. And with the repayment process being a percentage of your earnings rather than a portion of your student loan, that affordability is a sort of more comfortable means. The government have put it in place so that you are paying 9% of your earnings over £25,000. And for some of you, that will mean that the trajectory of your income will mean that you only pay perhaps 3/4 of your student loan off, perhaps the whole of your package. And then perhaps you're not eating into the interest rates that are applied to student finance. So they are looking to always make it affordable. And if over your 40-year repayment period, as it stands on the current programme 5, your salary does fall below £25,000, then they will pause any repayments. So they're always considering the eligibility and the affordability for graduates after they have graduated. So it really is sort of a case of sitting and looking, perhaps once you've graduated, to see where you are heading so that you can have a more educated thought about whether early repayment or the normal sort of minimal repayment might help. When you're thinking about a £30,000 salary, which is just over the graduate average at the moment, that would be a contribution that sits roughly at £38 a month as it stands at the moment. So it's sort of minimal when you're thinking about national insurance and tax and the things that might also be having an impact on your salary. I hope that helps.
And on this, repayments only start once graduates earn above a threshold. What if someone's income dips below that line or they move overseas?
Yeah, so hopefully we've kind of covered that a little bit, but just to go into a little bit more detail, if a student is earning over £25,000, they'll take 9% of the difference. So if, for example, we use that £30,000 threshold that we were talking about, if a graduate is earning £30,000, they'll take the £5,000 difference over £25,000, break that down into 12 months, and then take 9% of that part of their salary. So that would be that £38 that I was discussing. So hopefully that affordability is there. If a student, or should I say a graduate, chooses to move abroad during that time, they do need to let student loans know, because it could be that when they come back, they'll be asked to repay a larger sum of money calculated over the period that they were away. So there's an additional form that students fill out for Student Finance England just to say they're moving abroad for more than 3 months. And they will then base it on the salary within their country. So if there's any conversion rates that they need to calculate for you, and then you would still be making the contributions based on the salary that you have. And that way there's no big lump sum when a graduate returns to the country and they're not having to pay things off at a much higher or quicker rate.
Thank you. Could you break down exactly how the student loan interest rate is set each September and what it means for the borrowers while still studying?
Okay, so generally they're using the retail price index to set the interest rate, and it's normally set in September, on the 1st of September, based on the previous March. So they're looking at retail price index, so it is a variable interest rate, so it is worth keeping an eye on it. The interest rate applies from the moment a student takes their first payment until they pay their very last payment. But as I said before, it could be that because repayments are based on a student's earnings, they don't have any impact potentially on how they're making those repayments over the course of that 40-year period. The interest will be set at that variable rate. It's worth keeping an eye on. But also with the repayments, they're always based on earnings, so they will only rise as salaries rise and only fall as salaries fall.
Thank you. If someone switches course or transfers to another university midway through the first year, can they still receive funding, and what paperwork should they expect with that?
Yeah, Student Finance do need to know if a student changes their course. Now, often within a university setting, if they change a course, then the student support services at the university and the admissions teams will support a student in just informing Student Finance that they've changed within their university. If they're going outside and they're changing to another university, or they're taking a break, so for example, they've done 2 semesters on one course and then made the call that it's not quite the right thing for them, and they've started again at a new university in September, that may have an impact on the package that's available to them. So it could mean that, for example, if you're taking perhaps a 4-year course with a study abroad year, it's worth checking with Student Finance that they're going to fund the whole of that 4-year programme. There is a particular form, I think it's called a CO2, but please don't quote me on that one. But it basically informs Student Finance that there's been a change, and the university will help them in making that change across to Student Finance and make sure that they are going to get the whole package, and if not, where the additional funding is going to come from, if that's the case.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on to a bit more about UEA now, and a few questions on that. So first one is, what types of housing can freshers choose on campus, and how do the rents and facilities compare with other universities in the East of England?
We're really lucky at UEA. We have over I think there's now 3,600 rooms available actually on our campus. And as a campus university, that's obviously of benefit to us. The campus accommodation for your first year basically means that you're probably 10 to 12 minutes walk away from all of your teaching. So whereas a city university might offer you accommodation a little bit further away, it would mean that, there are no additional transport costs, for example, for accommodation at UEA. Predominantly, our accommodation is en suite accommodation. And you would be sharing with between sort of 8 and 12 people the kitchen facilities, but you would have your own bathroom within your room. Some of them are a bit bigger than others. Some of them are a little further walk away, but it is well known within the local area that we have a high standard of accommodation. And on top of that, our prices are quite competitive when compared to larger cities like I don't know, Manchester or London. We've got a number of options that are available. We still work like other universities in that we can work in partnership with private accommodation firms. So it's worth looking within your university, as well as obviously at ours at UEA, to see what private accommodation is out there. Within the second and third year, the Norwich accommodation is really competitive. We're one of the safest cities within the UK, and it means our student prices for accommodation are quite a bit lower than, say, some of the big cities and some of the other student cities. So we're quite competitive when looking at that private accommodation in your second and third year. But also we've had a number of private student accommodation companies build large complexes within the city too, which some will be a mix of Norwich University of the Arts students as well as UEA students. And, you know, they have additional facilities within them like common rooms and pool tables. So really for us, it's worth looking. I think probably the biggest sort of tip when I'm talking to students about accommodation that I talk about, and the bonus for UEA, is our 40-week contract. So our 40-week contract means that students have accommodation over Christmas and over Easter. So a shorter contract might mean that your university is moving in conference teams over Christmas and Easter, so you have to take everything home, but we are your full base for that 40 weeks, which is a pretty cool option. If your contract is longer, it could be that you're with a private company, which is how sort of more of the London accommodations work and the private accommodations within Norwich. So although they might be a similar price, the contract is longer, so you need to make sure you're looking at contract length because it might add up to a bit more money. But it also means that students have the option to live in the city as well. So there's quite a lot of choice at UEA. So we're really lucky within the university field.
Thank you. And UEA is renowned for creative writing. But which undergraduate program is currently excelling in rankings or graduate outcomes, and why?
Oh, gosh. That's kind of trickier to answer because there are so many amazing opportunities and programs at UEA, both to study traditional courses, but also to study some of the more unusual courses that are available across the UK. So, for example, we have an American Studies program that looks at politics and history within America. We have a global development program, which is a form of human geography, which gives you the opportunity to work on placements abroad. A lot of our courses offer study abroad programs or a paid placement year within it. So you're gaining that work experience within it. But I suppose for me, when I'm thinking about UEA, it's our research institutions that get cited across the world, which are really important. And we do a lot of research in conjunction with the Norwich Research Park, which we are part of, that is cited across the world. We have environmental science students who are looking at robotic readings on the poles. We've got computing science students who are looking at upgrades in agricultural work due to the setting within Norfolk. We've done a lot of work with the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital to look at new treatments for the ageing populace in Norfolk. So the research opportunities at UEA are really amazing, and we bring that teaching into the classroom as much as we possibly can. So if you're looking at things like environmental science, which has been running for over 50 years at the UEA, or you want to study something like history of art in the Sainsbury Centre, our gallery on campus, there's some really good opportunities to try something new at UEA, as well as looking at the established programs that we used to.
Thank you. I have one final question, and it's more about the safety in the city of Norwich and the features on the campus. And I was just wondering, how do the features in both the city and the campus make the students feel secure and supported?
Okay, secure and supported. Oh, we've got so many amazing support mechanisms at UEA. So if we think about safety first, obviously as a campus university, we have 24-hour security on site. So if a student happens to drop their keys or get locked out of their flat, they can be there pretty quickly. We also have an amazing app called Safe Zone, which means that students can carry around as such a direct line to security within their phone. So you can download the app on our campus, and that means that you can press a button and a first aider will be with you as quickly as they can possibly get one out to you. So if there's been an incident on campus, that safety mechanism is in place to support students. We run Nightline, as do many universities. So that's peer support offered by students that you can utilise and call in on. Norwich was voted over a number of years in the top 10 safest cities within the UK, especially from a student perspective. And on top of that, so for example, if you decided to take a night out in Norwich, we have a system where if, for example, you've happened to have run out of money, or your purse or your wallet has gone missing, or your phone has gone missing, you can contact the university and they will pop you in a taxi and get you home, and then sort out later how we can support you in that situation. So there's loads of safety mechanisms both within the city and at the university that support students to make them feel safe in their environment. And then our student information zone is one of the amazing resources on campus that supports students academically. They can support with budgeting tips. We have an amazing careers team that support you whilst you're a student and once you've graduated to make sure you're getting into the jobs that you want to get into. We have academic support within lectures and academic programs, and then we have pastoral support down to whether you're a commuting student or whether you're just looking to meet new people. I know, for example, there's a Lego group that meet quite regularly, and then we have an active campus where on a Wednesday our students are able to go out with what we call the pack, which is a group of dogs from volunteers across the Norfolk area who come just to walk their dog on campus for anyone who's missing their pups from home. So there are some amazing opportunities to sort of benefit from the support at UEA alongside a degree programme with us.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you for joining us today, and it's been lovely to hear about UEA and more about the student financing. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.